I'll start off with a quick introduction about myself, then a bit about my arch nemesis, imposter syndrome. I will then be kind of talking about how this really impacted me in the beginning of my career. I'll then go over a big career turning point that I had, and hopefully I'll close off with some hopefully helpful practical tips that really enabled me to start getting out of my own way and develop into the designer I am now. So yeah, let's go. A little bit about me. Hello, hi, I'm Eilidh, despite what all the letters there would suggest. It is pronounced Eilidh. I am from the Isle of Arran, which is a small island on the west coast of Scotland. This is my cat, Bee. I'm pretty much obsessed with her, but who wouldn't be? Look at those eyes. I am a senior systems designer at Media Molecule. Goodness, get it right, Molecule. And this is my journey so far as a professional game designer. My first job was at Outplay Entertainment, making levels on Angry Birds Pop. I then moved from Outplay to Fortitude Games, more recently known as Mediatonic Guildford. I was one of 2 designers there, working on a free-to-play version of the card game Exploding Kittens. Being in such a small team there, I learned a lot. I was soon designing features, balancing economies, the lot. At Fortitude, I then went on to work on a few cancelled games because games, and I was pitching original game ideas there too. And then in 2021, I got kind of my dream job as a games designer at Media Molecule, working on Dreams as a systems designer. And now at Media Molecule, I've recently been promoted to senior, so yay, and I am working on their new original project there at Media Molecule. So essentially, I'm kind of having the time of my life working with arguably some of the most creative people in the industry. And whilst I've been doing all of that, I have really, really struggled with my confidence and believing that I deserve the success that I've achieved. Despite working at my dream company, doing kind of consistently good, well-recognized work, it's something I've wrestled with my whole career. And it's gotten in the way of opportunities, speaking up for myself when I should have, and I'm working on it. And I'm still working on it. Classic imposter syndrome, I suppose. So let's talk about it. So what is imposter syndrome? Well, like all great essays, I will start off with a very famous inspirational quote. Any day now, they're going to realize what a mistake they made hiring me. I bet they're already wondering it. Said by me on many occasions when there's absolutely zero evidence to support this way of thinking. More officially, imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success externally, despite being high performing in like external objective ways. This condition often results in people feeling like a fraud or a phony and doubting their abilities. And it can end up looking a bit like this. So on the left in the blue is who you think you are, and it's an awkward mess of an individual who's trying so hard to impress people and has no talent. But really what other people are thinking is, hey, that's probably a pretty cool person. But why is this something that people are struggling with in the games industry? Because we're all really, really cool, right? Well, alongside cultural factors and our own upbringings, within the competitive world of game design, where innovation and creativity are absolutely paramount, we are surrounded by people who are extremely passionate about the thing we're working on. I mean, look where we are here, today. People really, really care about what we do, and that goes for people in the industry as well. People have references for everything, feeling like you're constantly in the know to then be an expert at designing these things can be really challenging. And it's especially challenging because much of design is subjective and really abstract. And how does this manifest itself in work? Well, because of course we all doubt ourselves sometimes, but here are some of the most common characteristics of imposter syndrome. We've got self-doubt, undervaluing your contributions, attributing your success to external factors, setting unrealistic expectations for yourself, and then that fear of not being able to ever live up to those expectations, the continuous fear of not having those expectations, and then you burn out, and then you're sabotaging your self-success. Because imposter syndrome tries to reinforce those feelings of inefficacy, convincing us that we aren't skilled enough to do that, to answer that question, to speak up in that meeting, to have an opinion on that, to go for that role. And I've had my fair share of those experiences, and I'd like to share how imposter syndrome was really getting in my way in the beginning, And believe me, this seemingly confident designer that's here today would be completely unrecognizable to 19-year-old Eilidh. So this is a post on my university's website. I stated I was leaving university a much more confident person, which absolutely is true, but probably for different reasons communicated here. So let's go back in time, 10 years, which is a pretty wild thing to say. In 2013, I was a 19-year-old, and I joined the Game Design and Production Management course at Abertay University, who are over there. They've got a stall, which is cool. And I left home a little nervous, of course, but really excited for university life. I left school with almost straight A's and felt like I could go away and, smash university. However, I joined a course of 50 very, very passionate game design students, and I very, very quickly felt so out of my depth. Everyone around me knew more games than me, had already tried much of the softwares that we would go on to use, like Maya or Unreal Engine. Some had been modding for years and could even code a little, and this knocked my confidence massively. So much so that I almost left my course 2 weeks before the end of my semester. The feeling of not belonging, like I wasn't good enough, like I was a fraud, all standard characteristics of imposter syndrome, right? So I approached my course lead and asked them to transfer to game art, saying that I just was not made for design. He asked me, please, Eilidh, just finish the semester, hand in your coursework and see what happens. So I did, and I absolutely loved doing the work. I loved design, and I even got some A's as well. So I thought, maybe I could do this thing. So apart from not putting myself forward for internships, because that just economically wasn't an option for me, I knew I had to throw everything at my coursework, really upskill as much as I could. And yeah, I even came to EGX and was here with my uni in a little booth over there, which was pretty weird seeing that. And then in 2017, when I came up for air, I left with a first-class honours degree and the highest GPA in my year, a portfolio bursting with projects, even an award from Unreal Engine. But when it came time to look for jobs, I saw the same phrase over and over again. Proven experience doing this, at least 3 years design experience doing that, industry experience in AAA development. And because internships weren't an option for me in university, I technically would be coming to these things with no experience. And because of that, I suddenly felt like that imposter again, a fraud. The fear of not meeting the expectations I'd put on myself, or being exposed as this phony who didn't actually know how to design, so I just did not apply to any design roles when I graduated, which is terrible. I thought then and there, design just is not for me, so I took another path. So I joined Outplay as a QA engineer, and I absolutely loved it. I always say that my short stint in QA really shaped the way I now design. It taught me to consider things from every angle, to speak to other disciplines. It was really, really great. But guess who Outplay also hired? My imposter syndrome. So I kept my head down. I shuffled around the office, not really speaking to designers. I couldn't muster up the courage. I was in meetings and obviously had questions. But yeah, I just wouldn't speak up. I thought, I'm not the experienced one here. Even though everybody was contributing to the discussion, regardless of discipline, I was just really getting in my own way. I couldn't speak up in meetings. It was not great. But what changed in me to get a design role 10 months later? Well, I had another look at design role descriptions, what companies were actually looking for in terms of soft skills. Yeah. These phrases came up time and time again. Presentation skills, able to collaborate, excellent communicators, being able to present and then report back on the design process. I knew I needed to present myself in a more confident way to advance my career in the way that I wanted to. I've always been a really highly driven person, and I worked really, really hard, but my confidence was absolutely getting in my way, and this had to improve if I was to ever interview and have the career that I wanted to have. I had to improve my communication, that's funny. I had to improve my communication skills and my confidence as someone with her own voice in the industry. So what did I do? I got out of my own way. For once, I plucked up the courage, I spoke to a lead designer, and I asked them at Outplay for a design test, purely just to try it out and communicate my interest in design, because I hadn't actually communicated that to anyone, that I was interested in design, which is silly. But this was the real start of my journey as a game designer. I did the test, I got some great pointers, and this person became a mentor to me over those months and would begin to advocate for my skills, introduce me to other designers, and sort of became to come out of my shell. And 3 months later, I was designing on Angry Birds Pop. So, of course, it has been a long journey from then to the designer I am today. Many, many ups and downs, and my imposter syndrome has absolutely come along for the ride. But I've had to make the continual effort to improve myself, my confidence, and work on the self-doubt that's really, really gotten in my way as a designer. So what are some practical tips I did to start improving that confidence, as someone with her own voice, I suppose? And it really did start with how I would communicate. Tip number 1, I suppose. I learned how to talk about game design, not games. Talking about design as a designer with little confidence in herself is really tough, especially when you think you don't have your own voice yet. But I learned that having an opinion on a game is one thing, and it's really great to have that. But learning to break apart games into their component parts and speak about them objectively would be the key to me really improving my communication skills in design. So I lived on this website, The Deconstructor of Fun. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's just like a complete bible of deconstructions and stuff. So I learned how to deconstruct games, understand systems, and the intention behind the design decisions being made. Feeling confident in your understanding of a game or a particular part of a game ensures that I was going into conversations, meetings, interviews, suddenly with a point of view, because I understood the intention behind the design that was being made. And I cannot stress how beneficial this can be to how you communicate your designs, because as I said before, design is so subjective. So just take the bias out of it. Understand the design intention behind a decision, and that enabled me to then design and defend my own decisions with a lot more confidence. Number 2, get good at presentations. Previously, the idea of getting up and presenting my designs to a group of people eagerly ready to pull them apart to best understand them used to terrify me. I'd be a shaking mess. I mean, despite this smiley face, I would be a shaking mess. I would make no eye contact with anyone, and there would be a lot of sleepless nights beforehand, rooted in the fear that once I presented my design to a group of people, I'd be exposed as this fraud, like, oh, Eilidh doesn't know how to design. I knew it. So I knew that I had to get over this. And what do they say? Practice makes perfect. Yeah, that is what they say. I thought, okay, goodness, let's keep going, guys. So I set out my own agenda when I was at Fortitude, that for every feature I designed for Exploding Kittens, I would also make a presentation outlining all the key bits of information to go alongside it. And I began to really understand the value of communicating my designs or just information in this way. I'd do the fully detailed design document, and it had all the detail that you would ever want, and then I would introduce it to the team via a fun and engaging presentation. As designers, we need to get teams excited about the stuff we're going to be working on together. And often just reading out your design document doesn't cut it. People glaze over, they think about their dinners, what they got up to that evening, and I tried to kind of get over this, to try and be like, hey, here's what we're going to be working on together. So I would build presentations outlining all the key bits of information. I would outline the design problem and how the ways that my design would help solve that problem, and then the work required to do it. I'd also ensure that I'd speak to team members one-on-one beforehand to gather their requirements too ahead of time, so the presentation or the design would never contain any big surprises for them, which helped my anxiety around it too, because I kind of knew what I would be getting into in a room. I began to use humor. I really started to be myself with the team and relax and enjoy talking through my designs this way, because I was having more fun. And then if you're having more fun, naturally you're a little bit more relaxed and confident. Build presentations on complex things. Doesn't matter if it's a potato or a tree, but build presentations on complex things, then present them to people over and over and over again. See what works well, see what jokes don't land, practice makes perfect. Number 3, befriend your fellow developers and learn how to communicate with them effectively. Feeling confident that your team trusts in your ability to be a designer can be really tough, especially when you aren't feeling confident in yourself. However, for a design to be as robust as possible, it needs to have been considered from all angles. So I knew I had to get better at communicating with individuals one-on-one to feel like my design was as good as it could be. And as I mentioned before, I would take the time to speak to different team members one-on-one to understand their considerations. I learned that communicating a design to a server programmer will always be different to the way you communicate it to an artist. So yeah, I kind of investing time in these relationships can result in these individuals kind of begin to trust your decision making, which can do wonders for your confidence in communicating too. So I endeavour to always have really good collaborative discussions at every stage of the design process, be as versatile as I can in the way that I communicate, and don't just speak to your peers and friends, like really kind of push yourself to improve your communication with new people all the time, regardless of team structure or hierarchy. And yeah, what are some of the practical things I did to start tackling my self-doubt and improve my confidence as a designer with our own voice? So to sort of echo the points I was making before, to really foster good working relationships, you have to be as human as you can. Show your imperfections. One of the most crippling aspects of imposter syndrome can be that self-doubt and the fear of not living up to your own expectations and thinking your contributions aren't valued or silly. And this can make us scared to show anything to anyone ever that isn't perfect. However, this does not cut it in game development. Everything was needed yesterday. So showing imperfect work and just being yourself is the key to fostering those good relationships. Be honest with others about your capabilities, get comfortable showing imperfect work, and have fun. It's games. It should be really fun. So show work as quickly as possible to gather the right sort of feedback that you need to improve it, because game dev is all about iteration, and that goes for the work that we do too. Number 5, have a strong support system. Like all things, the community of people we have around us can be really vital in challenging the negative thoughts we have about our abilities. Having a strong support system of trusted people around you, both inside and outside of work, is key. I 100% would have talked myself into leaving games if it wasn't for my support system, because imposter syndrome can be really, really tough. In all honesty, what really should be present throughout this whole deck is all the calls I've made to my mum throughout the years and all the amazing people I've been lucky enough to collect along the way. Sorry, my mum's right there. So I'm like, so find the people that help hype you up, and yeah, when you're like low, and remind you of everything you've achieved as well. Goodness. So then inside work, seeking feedback about your designs or the sort of designer you are from those you either really respect or trust can be really, really helpful in kind of pushing you forward too. Like with my current lead at Media Molecule, who's been encouraging me to do something like this for 2 years, and here I am. So find yourself your own little set of personal cheerleaders that help lift you up when you're feeling low. Number 6, challenge those feelings of self-doubt with evidence. Start a brag bag, which is a really weird phrase, I know, and I didn't know this was its name, but alas. This is where you can really build up a little list, maybe on your phone or somewhere accessible, with all the positive things people have said about your work. Maybe annual review quotes, some messages. It might absolutely feel a little bit awkward at first, but I promise when you're feeling low, or like you can't do something, you can easily refer back to it, and it'll 100% make you feel a little lighter and allow you to challenge those feelings of imposter syndrome, because challenging those thoughts with evidence can actually be really effective. Yeah, this is a little bit of a gnarly one, but stick with me. So writing your CV in a particular way can actually be really useful for fighting your imposter syndrome too, when going for new roles. Often in our CVs, we just write about our experience. We just bullet point it, and that's it. We move on to the next bullet point. But something I've found to be extremely useful when framing that experience is stating it as an action, and then following that up with the impact or the intention that that action had, either on the game or the team. And this did wonders for improving my confidence when applying for roles, and was always a great reference point for interviews as well. So here's my CV. When I'm talking about my time on Angry Birds, the action was that I created and balanced and assessed a bunch of levels. And then I made a point to follow that up with why that was important due to the impact that it had. And it was to ensure effective coin spend. Iterating on my CV and writing about my experience this way really allowed me to better frame and sell myself when I was struggling with confidence. And it showed that I understood the value of the work that I was doing too, which is always good in interviews and stuff like that. And yes, number 8, as the great Shia LaBeouf would say, just do it. Apply for roles, do the tests, consistently refine your CV, and interview. Interviewing and doing tests well is absolutely a skill in itself. It's not something we're all naturally good at, and it's something you have to practice to get good at. So if you don't get the job, it's cool. Like, go for the next one, because it was the only way I kind of got confident in my ability to sell myself in the right ways was by doing it, seeing what was received well by the panel, it sounds very official, by the person interviewing me, seeing what I needed to better define or explain, and treating interview like a skill in itself that I needed to get better at was improved my confidence as well too. And number 9, combating procrastination with the Pomodoro technique. So unfortunately, for a lot of us, imposter syndrome can often come with this like layer of procrastination as well that we don't speak about. And it's kind of this overwhelming feeling of not being able to do a task well can actually result in us putting it off for ages because we're obsessing over doing it perfectly. So you rush to complete it, and then any positive feedback you get on it feeds into those feelings of being a fraud because it couldn't possibly be good because you rushed it, so the cycle goes round. So something that really helped me power through this procrastination and just get on with the work was the Pomodoro technique. So it's a time management method based on 25-minute stretches of focused work, then broken down into 5-minute breaks. And this website here is a total lifesaver. It's pomofocus.io, and whenever I have a task, I go to this website, start the timer, and I just get on with the work. And funnily enough, the self-doubt lessens in those 25-minute achievable chunks. And number 10, please do not be afraid to ask questions. I used to think that if I asked a question in a meeting, then that was it, the gig was up. I would be caught out as a fraud, the P45 was on its way. But actually, asking a question in a room full of other people improves your confidence in meetings, and it actually probably helps other people out in the room too. So to enable me to gain confidence at Media Molecule, because guess who they also hired? My imposter syndrome. I felt like I couldn't ask questions because they'd realize what a mistake they made hiring me, the quote from earlier. But then I brought it up with my lead because she was like, "You're so quiet," and I was like, "I know, I'm struggling." And she was like, "My goodness, Eilidh, please just ask the questions," because I was actually wondering that too and I forgot to ask. And the more that I did that, the more my confidence improved as a molecule, and now I just won't stop putting my hand down in meetings, so maybe that was a bad move for my manager, giving me that tip. But yeah, what I'd love to end on was to reassure you that imposter syndrome is absolutely more common than you think. I asked a bunch of my colleagues at Media Molecule, ones who, on the face of it, are really, really confident, highly experienced, creative, talented people in my eyes, if they'd ever struggled with imposter syndrome and if they had any tips for us too. And they did. From seniors to leads, directors, it's something they could all relate to and had their own ways of combating it. So our highly experienced lead UX designer advises that we should be as vulnerable and as honest as you can bear, even when it's terrifying. Which absolutely is needed to form those vital bonds that we need to do with our fellow developers. Another very, very experienced lead producer at Media Molecule says that he typically compares what he knows now to what he knew as a fresh-faced graduate, and by doing that, that will often put things into perspective for him. A super talented lead systems designer says that she keeps a log of really nice things people have said about her work, and she'll look back at it when she's feeling low, which is very similar to that brag bag that I went over earlier, because it really is such a useful tool. And MM's wildly creative senior narrative artist advises that we should have a hype friend, a person that boosts you up and reminds us of our achievements and successes, relating to that strong community, which is really important too. And our studio director, Siobhan Reddy, who's been at Media Molecule since its beginning, it's 17 years ago, says that she tries to remember that most people have their own fears and insecurities. The most confident-looking people are often petrified, and it can be helpful to remember that we're all just muddling along in our own way. And our newly appointed creative director, John Beach, a Little Big Planet fan, 14 years ago, who was hired 14 years ago just for making levels, in his spare time after work. He shared with us that having arrived from being a builder, I definitely had my fair share of imposter syndrome to overcome. In fact, I'm feeling it very acutely now in my new role. He advises us to remain humble, appreciate others' points of views, use that to help change or galvanize your views. This way, you feel like you're always making progress, that you openly accept feedback and criticism, and you don't see that as a reinforcement of your imposter syndrome, but as a tool to help dispel it. So yes, I just wanted to reiterate that if you are struggling with imposter syndrome, first of all, you are absolutely great, despite what that little voice says. But secondly, you are not alone. It's obviously something those of us all over the industry are dealing with. So find what works for you and how you want to combat it. And there's lots of us here in the industry willing and waiting to help you out. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. We have time for questions, if anyone has any. These are my contact details. I'd appreciate a follow on Twitter because I had to make a new one. And here's a summary of the tips if you want to take a photo or anything. Thank you.
That's the solution to imposter syndrome, isn't it? Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, there we go.
Solves it all. Yeah, any questions? I'm here to go where you tell me to go. So
there, I suppose.
the one person with the hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned earlier about when you first look at jobs and it's that 3 years experience in the industry and everything like that. And how do you sort of like, because I know people are like, just do it, just apply for those jobs anyway, but then you read through the list and it's just like, having all these things, is it still worth it? Like, I mean, how do you know where to pitch yourself?
Well, I know. I think it's a difficult one for me because I went into QA. I took that path, and that was the route that worked for me. But I know other people in the industry have, it honestly is just about matching yourself up with that company. And I'd obviously had experience from like university and stuff like that. And I feel like if I'd really kind of tried to better frame what I was actually doing at university to what they were looking for, but I just wasn't doing it at all. So I would build your CV and look at what they're looking for and see if you can match up any of your proven experience to what they're looking for and see if you can. But also equally, like, I wouldn't just say this, like QA is an absolutely fantastic way to get into design. Like, and if you go in and then you're like, I was just trying to be the best QA person I could. And then, as I said, I then reached out and then went into design that way. But yeah, it can be difficult. It can be tough. But are you university or anything like that, or?
Doing a master's.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've definitely seen that route in as well. So I would just definitely have a look at the positions and everything that you've done so far, depending on your experience, and see if you can sort of frame it up. Just look at those job roles, and yeah, you can be a wizard with your CV. So you just need to get in front of people, and that's what I'd say.
Have we got any more? It looks like you're going to have to choose.
You're closest, yes, so there.
All right,
I've been chosen. So would you say the QA pathway is still a viable option now that it was like 10 years ago, now that there's so many more people trying to get in?
Yeah, I mean, I still would. It still definitely happens. I think it depends on the company and the company's culture. When I went to Outplay, it was actually just down the road from my university, so I knew that they were really good at kind of moving people into design. And I think it does definitely depend on the company. I know that Media Molecule are very kind of, they have that progression track as well. So, and Fortitude, where I worked before, 100% that happened there too. So I definitely wouldn't say that that's no longer an option. It's why I would definitely suggest it. I think, as I said, like, me being a systems designer, I have to kind of be all that. I had to consider things the way a QA person would as well. So it really, really did help me. So yeah, I would do it if it's an option, for sure.
Got time for a few more if you're up for it? Excellent. You're the closest to one this time.
Hi, thank you for speaking about this, because I feel like I can relate in some way, but I'm kind of in like the inverse situation where I'm not like studying like game design, but I want to get into game design, but it's like really overwhelming because I feel like I'm so behind on so many different aspects. So like, what tips do you have for someone like me?
Yeah, so I totally feel you. When I joined university, as I said, like loads of people around me basically already had portfolios, and I was like, oh my God, I'm now catching up with all of these people, what? What I would say is make as much as you can. Having like a portfolio full of stuff that can like showcase, and they don't have to be super long because no one's going to play through all of it, but I would try and showcase like a range of different skills through a portfolio, and then build your CV based on the things that you've learned there. So I would try and Unreal Engine is a really good shout. I would also hype up Dreams as well, for just being a great way of just like making stuff and showing off stuff as well. So yeah, just I would make as much as possible, and then you're already getting that learned experience that we would all have as well. Yeah. Where's her friend gone?
I'm over here, yeah, anyway. I'm kind of the wrong side. There you go.
Hi, so I was just wondering, what made you want to go down the route of a systems designer over just like a general game designer?
Yes, that is an interesting question. Yes, kind of a funny one as well. So I was just a game designer at Fortitude before, and I kind of, because it was such a small team, I was kind of doing bits of everything. And then I was interviewing at Media Molecule, and my now boss was like, "Oh, you're a systems designer." I was like, "What? Am I?" You know. So and yeah, it's something I've kind of. I think the way I would talk about designs and put together designs was always like fairly systemic, and I do think that comes from my time in QA. So yeah, I've fallen into it, I suppose, and yeah, really enjoyed it. But it's again something I didn't know I was until I was told I was a systems designer, and then it's worked out. But yeah, so it wasn't really a choice. It was that is I guess what I'm good at, and then got that. Title, I suppose, but yeah.
Did we have? Oh, there we go. Annie was being pointed to by this man, so I think we have to go here.
How hard was it to overcome imposter syndrome?
Oh, I've not overcome it, even now standing here. Making this presentation this week, I've been like, oh. So yeah, it was, I would say it has been definitely me getting over that, like, I should have a voice in a room was probably the biggest hurdle for me to climb. And as I said, that was just something that I had to become really good at understanding the intention behind design decisions being made. So that's kind of like what I've really honed in on, is that if I understand why decisions are being made about a design and then can like articulate it really well, that was kind of like the unlocking for me in my brain of like feeling like, I could maybe put my hand up in that meeting and contribute. But I've definitely not overcome it. I would say it's something that we probably all wrestle with up the hierarchy of the studio and stuff. But doing little tips like that that I've mentioned today have really helped me. Like the idea of doing this 2 years ago was just not a thing. So yeah, just keep working at it and it will get easier, I would say.
Just try your best to overcome it.
Oh, maybe in 5 years I'll have overcome it, maybe. Thanks.
Oh, you're done. Oh, cool. Oh, that's the microphone. Anyone? Oh, I so feel that as well, like 18 years full-time for me, imposter syndrome. I've learned to be at ease with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. It's my friend now, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, did you have a question?
Thank you so much for the talk. It was extremely inspiring. I'm a senior UI artist in the industry already, but I relate to so much things that you said, and also for you and the other person that was kind of concerned about getting a job in the industry. Sorry, just a short, and then I'm going to get to the question.
Yeah, help.
Just believe in yourself, and I got the job through a fake portfolio work. I've lied through what I've presented, being like, this is a project I worked on, and this is, my vision, but it imploded because so many games got cancelled, and nobody sees them. So nobody's going to watch at the loose ends of it. As long as your vision is cool and you've done something you love, they're going to see it. So what I've suggested to you and some of my students that I had, do a project that you think is worth it, that is interesting for the company, but you can totally lie. I know it sounds weird, but it does work. And sorry. And for the question, at the current moment I have, sometimes I struggle with what I want to contribute to my company, because I love to study the UX, I love to study game design. And as a UI artist, it's complex because they mostly ask me to do the pretty stuff over their systems, but I always have like, we could do this a bit better, we could do this, and I'm almost like very curious about everybody's job. And what I found is like, if there is a gap, if you think there might be a gap, something of like an artistic designer, where one of my happiest moments was when I got mislabeled on the place on the work, and I was close to the level designer, and I was simply often inquiring, what they're doing that? Is it gonna be more interested to do something different like that? And they found my feedback very useful. But I definitely found like that's not what is being asked for me from the company. So if that makes sense as a question, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think I get what you mean. Yeah, so I think it depends on the design process that studios have and things, because definitely, like at Media Molecule, we're very, very collaborative. So like I'll kind of, we get set like a brief, and it's not just like me there being like, yes, I am now the boss of this design, you know, it's definitely like a collaborative conversation where like absolutely like UI, UX artists are helping define that, like, because my design would have holes in it if there wasn't other people also contributing to it. So that's a tough one, because I would always, I would hope that most studios are encouraging that sort of, you know, collaborative, and you want to just have like nice people and want to work on games together, you know. But if you have like kind of, I would definitely look at the deconstructions of stuff like that, and it always helps if you have like a point of view or an opinion on a design and want to contribute to that design, if you can back it up with like, you know, I want to do this so that the player feels this, you know, and you kind of match it up with like an intentional statement at the end, it better frames the conversation. People are like, oh yeah, that is true, that would be that, you know. So I would definitely, I always push design intentions like within everything that I'm kind of doing, and if that's been the best sort of thing for me to help kind of push myself into that industry and make people kind of hopefully like hear what I'm saying a little bit more, because I used to kind of get drowned out definitely, or felt like I couldn't kind of contribute. But if you're there with like, you know, oh, I understand actually the intention behind this design decision, and I can like articulate it well, that was a really helpful step for me, definitely. Yeah, hopefully that's been some help. Cool.
Hello, sorry, I was just ordering some chairs. There's a question over there.
Yeah, so since you've moved to being like a system designer, do you miss doing QA at all since changing?
Yeah, I mean, I do miss doing QA, definitely. Yeah, I did, as I said, like I really, really enjoyed my time in QA, and it's an interesting, whenever I design my systems now, like I have to kind of design the tool that we would use to like input the content on that system. And one of the first things I do is like, how would I as a QA member want to speed up this testing and stuff? And I've never actually like left that sort of way of thinking. Yeah, and I think it's amazing. The varied of like everything you kind of get handed to you as well was always so much fun. Whereas at the minute we're kind of, you know, it's more like laid out for us like what we would work on. Whereas, yeah, QA, I was just kind of hopping around all the time, and I felt like I kind of got to a really confident place as a QA engineer, then became a designer, and I was like, oh, I'm back to having to try and get that confidence. But yeah, QA is awesome. Are you in QA yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, so yeah. No, I do miss it sometimes.
We might be able to squeeze, I mean, you're allowed to stop whenever you want, but does anyone else? Oh, another one round
Another
here.
question there, yeah.
Hello, you're right.
I have a question about your transition from QA to design. Like, how did that work? Did you have to do a new application? Were you just naturally promoted?
No.
And how did you know it was time to change?
Yeah, so as I said, I kind of joined, and I knew I wanted to design because it was what my degree was in and stuff, and I really, really liked doing it. And I didn't tell anyone I was interested in design at all initially. And then, as I said, I just kind of wanted to I just spoke to one lead designer, and I think he'd actually seen because I'd won an award for my for my honors project thing, and he'd seen it just like you know, and he was like, oh, do you design? And I was like, I do design, you know, and then that kind of started a conversation. In terms of me like doing the test and stuff, it went through the official channels. Like they needed designers, and I'd already kind of made it clear that I was interested in design. So they said they hired internally before they looked externally. Yeah, and I did the test. I interviewed. And it was interesting because I'd asked for other tests, and I kind of, because it was, funny, at university, because I was in mobile, we weren't actually taught an awful lot about mobile, so I suddenly had to learn an awful lot about, like, how games make money and stuff like that. So, yeah, doing the tests and stuff was really helpful. But, yeah, all official track, got interviewed like everybody else sort of would, and then, I was lucky enough that they were like, yeah, cool, Eilidh, you can hop over. So, yeah, that was kind of it for me.
got one more here, if that's okay, and then we can. Is that all right? We've got one more here.
Oh yeah, hello. Yeah, I couldn't see you. Hi.
It's all right. I'm a
Hey.
hovering voice.
Hi, your talk was really inspiring.
I'm glad.
So I've worked on a team where everyone is just so good at what they do, and I'm starting out, especially being the only woman on the team. I've had anxiety of challenging some of the ideas that are spoken in the room, and sometimes I'm like, I want to give my feedback or something like that. Like, did you ever struggle with speaking up like that? Like, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, 100%. I actually still struggle with it now, for sure. I'm kind of like the only way I sort of get over that was just asking clarifying questions. I found of like, like, hey, what did you mean by that? Even if you kind of got it, like ask like, hey, what did you mean by that? And then it's kind of opening a dialogue a little bit more. Because it is just a confidence thing that you're like, oh, can I actually speak in this meeting, you know? And yeah, I relate to being a woman as well in a room full of very, very passionate people too, and it can be tough. And I'm going to keep saying it, the deconstructions of games and stuff really, really helped me kind of, when there's a bunch of opinion in the room, like at the end of the day as designers, like it's all kind of assumptions until it's in the hands of the players. So like, I found something that was kind of useful was to be like, hey, is that like, do we know that for a fact, or is that just an assumption we're making, you know? And then we can kind of, then we can send it off to user research, or we can like test it with like data and stuff. So yeah, being comfortable just with like saying like, oh, you know, that we're all just, it's all just opinions at the end of the day. And then if you're doing the deconstructions of fun, then you kind of really understand you can take the bias out of it and just be like, hey, well, this system is really good for this, and there's like, this is all proven because it was successful in these games because of like this, you know. So just get comfortable at taking opinion out of things, and that was something that worked for me at least. So yeah.
Nice one. Okay, I think we're about bang on. Oh, there's one more question. You got one more in you?
Yeah.
All right, then, yeah, we'll make this the last.
Thank you. So you talk about approach to obviously mobile games and previously having to adjust to that approach. What do you think are the main differences into how you approach mobile games versus other platforms?
Yeah, I thought it would be very different. But something I sort of realized, and this always got like eyebrow raises in interviews, was like, hey, design is design. It's actually about your ability to like break down a really complicated thing and communicate it back to teams of people and get them really excited about it. And that is the exact same when I was doing it on mobile to when I'm doing it, you know, on console. It's a similar process. It's all about kind of understanding the design problem, coming up with a solution to it, and then pitching it back to a group of people. The big difference I found was the screen size. I was used to like kind of coming up with like wires and mocks and stuff like that, like here, and I was like, oh God, suddenly it's like this, and I have to consider this, and you know, and obviously the controls are a lot more. But yeah, totally different way of designing. You're kind of designing to like a shorter session length, so like the stuff you're doing has to like catch people's attention a lot quicker. So yeah, probably just user research flow and things, but what I'm actually doing day to day hasn't differed massively. It's just kind of, all about communication, I would say. Yeah, thanks.